But I want to investigate your thinking a little bit. Do you think it's morally wrong to initiate physical force against someone who hasn't violated anybody's rights?
What are you talking about?
To use force to take their money or their property, if they haven't violated anybody's rights.
What force are you talking about? Give me an example of force.
Well, when you tax somebody, you forcefully extract their money, right? Are taxes voluntary?
Yeah, you don't have to pay them.
Really?
You don't have to pay them.
If you don't pay your taxes,
you go to jail.
Right.
You weigh that.
So
there's a cause and effect.
You think that they're voluntary? You think taxes are voluntary?
Everything in life is voluntary. You
really?
don't have to do it. If you're true libertarian, you don't have to do anything because the government said it.
Well, let me ask you a question.
If you're willing to pay the consequence.
If an armed robber puts a gun to your head and says, "Give me your wallet," and
I don't have to give it to them.
And you give it to him, have you given it to him voluntarily?
Yeah, because I don't have to give it to him.
Isn't the distinction?
You're making the assumption that because you put me in a situation that you define as one that I have to do something.
Yeah, you could put in jail or a bullet through my head.
I don't have to do it if I'm willing to live with the consequence.
Doesn't voluntary mean that you take the action and there is no penalty for not taking it? You can do it freely.
Okay.
So if you're going to get a bullet in your head and you say that's voluntary, I don't see that really.
That's your choice. That's your choice.
You really call that voluntary?
Why wouldn't it be?
Well, voluntary.
Who says you have to do it? Just
because you want to live. That's why.
Then that's a choice you make. You have the rationale, the reasons why you made the choice. But I want to live, therefore I will give you my wallet.
Involuntary actions.
You're making assumption, of course, that the gun has bullets in it.
Yeah, usually the term voluntary means that you can take it without suffering any penalty or downside.
No, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
No? So if you have a gun to your head, you're doing voluntary choices?
If
you put a gun to your daughter's head and said you have to go to University of South Florida.
You can do things that are voluntary.
Would that be voluntary?
Doesn't necessarily mean that there's no penalty associated with it.
Well, voluntary, I understood it, was when there is no force or intimidation or threat of force.
Well, you're using all these hot words. Force and intimidation doesn't necessarily. That's the opposite of force and intimidation is not necessarily voluntary.
But you agree that it is forceful, the extraction of the taxes.
No, I don't agree with that. No, I don't.
Oh, it's not forceful.
No, I don't agree.
If you don't pay, the government won't use
force.
Pay
my taxes. There are a lot of people who go to jail for not paying their taxes.
And the government will do what?
Right? Am I right? Am I right? Okay, I just want to know that. A lot of people voluntarily say, you know what, I'm not paying.
But so you would say that they're free not to pay?
Sure they are.
But they suffer a consequence.
Of course.
But that's the difference between the voluntary and the non-voluntary.
It's your choice. Why are you having a hard time with this?
Because people understand that there is a big difference between taking an action or a decision when there is a threat of force and taking one when there is no threat of force.
Okay.
Two different situations.
So
would you agree?
How do we finish this? Because I don't know where we're going here.
Well, I'm just trying to examine your ethical underpinnings and find out if you are committed not to use force against somebody else in order who hasn't violated anybody's rights. That's the issue. I know you're a moral man, and I know you take these issues seriously.
I do.
So the issue that I'm raising is
to do with the presidential race.
Well, starting the use of force against someone who hasn't violated anybody's rights is morally wrong. That's why we put robbers in jail.
Okay.
Because they're doing something morally wrong.
Right. So they made a choice.
The government should not.
They made a choice. They made a choice to rob, and they suffered the consequences. So where is the problem? Well, they didn't have to rob. No one forced them to rob.
That's a choice that we put people in jail for.
Right.
But I'm saying that all choices are not the same.
Okay.
If you give somebody money because they put a gun to your head, it's different than if you give it voluntarily out of the goodness of your heart.
That's right. Okay.
So it is quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, sure there's a difference. But you still make a choice. That's my only point. You make a choice. Whether you have a gun to your head or not, you make a choice. Free will, God gave it to us. Use it. People do every day. And just because the government writes a law or there's a rule doesn't mean I have to do what that law or that rule says. I have free will.
Absolutely. You have free will and you can jump off a cliff or get shot by but when you take an action under duress, we call that under duress.
Okay.
It's different than if you take an action freely, voluntarily. So that's what the distinction I'm trying to make.
But I don't see the government holding a gun to my head to pay taxes?
Well, if you don't pay the taxes, as you
just
said
take
before,
they just take it out.
If you don't pay the taxes, they send you to jail or they fine you.
It's a consequence. I know that's the consequence of not paying taxes.
Okay. So I want to thank you for giving us a great interview.
I'm glad you think so. I didn't know we were going there for a moment.
It was interesting to understand your thinking, and I appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate being with you.
Thank you very much.
Take care of yourself. All right.
Very good.
You guys take care.
Okay.
I'm going. Can I go now?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm free.
You did a good job.